everybody, this is Pretty from It's a Pretty World. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm using this Falling For You stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. This is a new stamp set from their release Cheer and Joy for this month. And it's a beautiful critter stamp set, woodland critter stamp set. So I'm choosing 3 of the leaf stamps to start stamping using the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink because I plan to use Copic markers. I'm adding a soft pad underneath so I get even stamping. I'm making 5 cards using the same stamp set and nothing else, maybe a few other products which are easily interchangeable. Like, you don't necessarily need to have any of those products to make this card except for coloring medium. Again, you don't have to use Copic markers. You can use any coloring medium you have in your stash. It could be Copic, it could be watercolor, it could be color pencils, whatever suits you, use it. So I was starting to color my leaves. So the first set of leaves I wanted to do it in a green and a yellow blend, and the colors I used was YG13, Y13 and Y000. So basically all of my 5 cards are going to have a very fall theme. Again, you don't have to use these stamps just for fall. You could use it for any like any seasons. You don't really necessarily need to make this leaf background. You can make your own backgrounds, and eventually I'll be showing you some ways to make your own backgrounds without any stamps, easy backgrounds without making any stamps, without using any stamps. My idea is to challenge myself to use the same stamp over and over again. Usually we may make 1 or 2 cards and then put it away, or whenever we make cards we try to use other products with that. But what if you don't have enough maybe resources to buy all the products out there? So what do you do? And you love this one stamp and nothing else. What do you do? How do you use this one stamp multiple times so you don't feel like you didn't get the bang for your money? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's a better term to use or not, but it's just ideas encouraging you, and maybe not just encouraging, challenging you to look at your stamp sets in multiple ways rather than just 1 or 2 ways. And again, as I'm making the stamps, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I could do so much more with just the stamp alone and nothing else. And the sentiments in the stamp set are quite versatile. They do have a thank you sentiment, a missing you sentiment, a birthday sentiment. So you can, again, as I said, you could really mix it up. You can really use it for many, many, many occasions, the same stamp set. So here I'm continuing to color my leaves with this pretty fall colors. I for sure am missing my fall. When we moved from Minnesota to New York, New York's fall is so different than Minnesota fall. Minnesota has a lot of those red and yellow trees, like the maple trees, and those colors look so beautiful, and I miss that in New York. So I'm just kind of giving myself a Minnesota fix with the colors that I chose for today's coloring. I'm sure if I go north of New York, there'll be many of you who will tell me, no, there are places in New York that you could see colors. I'm sure there are places. But where I live right now, I don't have too much fall color to see. Anyway, so what I did next, after I was done coloring the background with leaves, I moved on to color my moose and my hedgehog. Now, I have the colors mentioned there, but I also add those colors in my description box below. So for the moose, I always start with my darker color. What I mean to say is I always start laying the shadows where I think the shadow of a particular image would be. So in this case, for the moose, it is his leg, his belly, underbelly, you know, places like that. And I also wanted to give him a little bit of texture. I didn't want him to look smooth and plain. I wanted him to have hair. I wanted him to have, not hair, maybe it's fur. I wanted him to have fur. And in order to do that, what I did was I used my marker to flick in lines. So instead of just scribbling the marker, every shade that I used, I made sure I was flicking it. So you can see it. I'm sure, I'm so sorry that my camera angle was not right when I did this. So my hand pretty much covers what I'm doing, but I promise next time I'll make sure my camera angle is much better so you can see how I'm coloring and what I'm doing. So basically I'm just adding really fine lines using my markers in different shades and adding the texture or creating the the fur for my little moose. And he is just the cutest little moose you could ever see. He's just adorable. The smile is amazing. He looks like a happy guy. So I just loved this little moose image with that Simon Says created with this stamp set. Anyway, so I'm continuing to do that with the brown colors that I chose, and creating the fine flakes all over his body, giving him that fur, a shiny fur or coat over his body. And then I kept his face quite light, and I did not add any of that flecks near his snout, because usually their snouts are smooth. So I kept his snout area quite smooth, and then I moved on to his antlers. For his antlers, I did not do the flecks. I kept it very basic shading, because you don't really see much of those detail hairy stuff on the antlers as much as you see it on their bodies. So I did warm colors for his antlers. So I started with W7, W5 and W3. So basic color, gave the darker shadow, then the lighter color, and then blended it all out with my lighter shade. And I did the same thing for the hoop. But always keep in mind the shadows. You want to know where the shadows would be, and put your darker colors where the shadow is, and then blend it outwards. So that way it looks really, it looks like there are dimensions in the critter. And then I moved on to the hedgehog. And for the hedgehog, I started off with a lighter shade. Yes, surprise, surprise. I laid the color of E40 all over the hedgehog's body. And then I took the darkest color, in this case, I think it's E44, and I made tiny spikes, like how a hedgehog would have on his body. So just tiny spikes. There is the illustration of this image does show a few spikes, so go over it and then add a few more all over his body. And then I went with the lighter the medium shade and then the lighter shade, and did the same thing for his legs. And then for his body too, I didn't want his body to have a lot of color. I wanted it to show more like white. Obviously it's not a heat, and what I'm imagining is the moose is the guy and the hedgehog is the little pretty girl. So for the little girl, I added the hedgehog girl, I added very warm, lighter shades of warm colors, warm gray colors. I used warm W3, W1 and W00, and then a little bit of blush on her cheeks, just to show her that she's blushing as she's seeing this handsome moose. And then I also cut out another leaf. I do not have a dies for any of these images. I just fussy cut them all. And then I took a circle die and I cut a circle out of it. Again, you don't have to have a circle die. You can just make a circle out of a plate and then cut it out. And then I took this MFD cloud stencil, and I stenciled the cloud using a very light blue distress oxiding. You don't need to have the stencil either. You can easily make a stencil by just cutting the cloud shape on a copy paper and using it as a stencil. I have the stencil, so I'm using it. I'm using products that can easily be changed with whatever you have or whatever you feel like making. And then the scene is that the hedgehog is giving a leaf to the moose, a beautiful colored leaf in place of a flower, obviously. And she's telling the moose that I'm falling for you. And I stamped that sentiment onto a black cardstock with white embossing pen, and I created my own speech bubble. You see that? I just drew in straight lines and a little arrow showing the hedgehog that she's saying, "Hey Moosey, I am falling in love for you," or "I'm falling for you." It's the cutest little scene. And then I just adhered all of this on top of that background panel that I created using some foam adhesives. And then I popped this entire panel onto a top folding white cardstock, and that completed the card. And here is the finished look of the card. Okay, for the next card, which is the second card, I took this wonky stitched rectangle die from Simon Says Stamp, and I die cut the edges of the white cardstock. And I'm taking this circle die. Again, you don't have to use a circle die. You could use a plate, whatever you have which is circular, just to trace a circle. That's all you need the die for. And I want to create a wreath using the same leaf images that I used for making the background in the first card, and I want to pop that fox that you saw earlier in the center of that wreath. And then I started to stamp the leaf all over the circle. Now, the pad that you're seeing, the black pad that you're seeing, it's actually a pin board from Simon Says Stamp. I happen to have 2 of those, and I don't know why I bought 2, but anyway, it was blessing in disguise, because now I can use one of them for stamping, for keeping it under my paper when I'm stamping. When you give a little bit of softness underneath your paper, you usually tend to get better where you get stamping result when you're stamping, and that was the reason why I used that black piece. Again, you don't have to have that. You can use any even a mouse pad if you have from the past with you, should do the trick. Anyway, so I stamped the images all over that circle, and then I colored it exactly the same way as I colored the first one. And then I took this little fox image. Isn't he a cute little fox? And I stamped him using the same Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. And I wanted to color him using Copic markers. And I used some orange colors for making the fox. So it's really not orange. He has an undertone, brown undertone, and an orange top on him, so he's not completely orange fox. He has an orange tone to him. So I started off with the darkest color. In this case, it was E39. And what I did was, unlike the moose, the flicks that I used for the fox was really shorter flicks, just because the area of the image was quite lesser than the area of the image or in case of the moose. So the flicks were supposed to be were kind of needed to be smaller. So I did the same thing, used all my markers to flick the colors rather than coloring them smooth. So I started off with the darker color, laying the shadow, and then colored it from there to the lighter. And then when I was done coloring the fox completely, I fussy cut him, and then I went ahead to do my sentiment. And for sentiment, I used a stamp called I'm Thankful For You, and then I stamped the same sentiment. Stamped the sentiment onto a black cardstock using white embossing powder. The white embossing powder I'm using is the Fine Detail from Simon Says Stamp. Then I used this banner die, which is also from Simon Says Stamp. Again, you can easily cut the banner die using a scissors, and I just cut that sentiment in order to place it under the fox. And I took a jute string that was there in my stash for a long time, and I tripled it, and then I tied it into a bow. So I had a nice fluffy bow rather than a really scrawny bow. If I were to take just one string, then the bow would really be scrawny, and I didn't quite like it. And then I did the same thing. I took the stencil, the cloud stencil, and I added that stencil, the cloud effect, right in the middle of the circle, just where the fox is going to be. So the clouds is behind the fox, and then the sentiment is underneath him. And the bow, I put it right on top. I debated a bit, and then I decided on the top. And I used glossy accent because I thought that was a hard glue to use. I mean, not a hard glue. It was a strong glue to use. You could definitely use Gina K Designs Connect Glue too, or Pop Glue Dot would do it too. I had this lying on my desk rather, and then I used it. And then I added some jewel drops from Pretty Pink Posh all over the wreath, just to add a little bit of bling. Then I mounted this onto a side folding card, and I was done. And here's the look of the finished card. For my third card, I went with this cute squirrel holding an acorn. Isn't he adorable? And I stamped him very basic. Now for the squirrel, I really did not do any flicking, nothing. I did just very simple coloring. Because the image was so small, his body was so little, it wasn't too visible to do a lot of work on it, so I just kept it very simple. So I started off with the darker shade, E39 again, and went to E33, E35, 35, 33, and I think 31. I'm not sure. I'm sure I'll make sure that the colors are down in the description below, so you can see what are the colors I used. And then I did the same thing, went darker to lighter, and I colored the squirrel completely, and I fussy cut him just like I fussy cut all the other images. And then I use this die. I think it's called the Leaf Branch Oval die from SSS Stamp. You don't have to use this die. You could just use a circle to create a shaker card. Now, I didn't quite finish it as a shaker card. You'll see as I'm going. And then I die cut this onto a white cardstock, and I colored those leaf, the branch, using the same green colors that I used, a green and yellow combination that I used in the past for my leaves. And then I took this 2 shades of brown, and that little strip that's in between the ovals, I imagine that it would be another branch from a tree. So there's leaves from the tree, and then there's a branch on which the squirrel that I've just colored and cut is going to sit on. And I added some wood grain effect to the branch. I didn't want it to be plain brown, but added a little bit of texture onto the brown piece, onto that little strip, so it looked like he's sitting on a tree branch. And then I took this a Lawn Fawn embossing stitched rectangle. It just embosses the double stitched rectangle onto that, and I also put that oval die once again, that leaf die once again in the center of it, and I ran it through my die cut machine, and that's what you got. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to cut the colored images and then layer them onto this actual image that panel that I'm going to use for my card. So I just cut them from the back side of the die, just because I wanted the cut to be really smooth. So cutting it from the back made more sense than cutting it from the front to keep the edges smooth. So once I adhered that using a liquid glue, I kept it aside to dry. And then I took I took this laminate sheet. Now this is a trick that I saw from one of the videos that Jennifer McGuire had done recently, where she created not really a shaker card, but a backer for your cards, like a see-through window almost, with shaker elements in it, which really didn't shake because you would laminate this. So I just used some of those colored leaves and a little bit of gold sprinkle, and then I heated up my laminating machine, and I passed this piece through the laminating machine when it was ready. And once I had done laminating it, all of those things were squished between the two clear laminating sheets, and that it just trapped the leaves and the glitter just trapped between it. And I can tell you, friends, doing this for the first time, I did not have glitter all over me. I was happy. I was really, really happy. Of course, you don't have to do this. You can just do it a simple shaker card, and that would look beautiful too. You don't really need to have a laminating machine and do all this fun stuff, but you could just do a shaker card, add the leaves in it, add the glitter in it, and you'll be good to go, and it will look beautiful. And then after I was done, I wanted to stamp the sentiment directly onto my white cardstock. And I used the black ink again, and I stamped "I am thankful for you" again. So this is the second time I'm using the same sentiment. It made sense for me to use that again for this particular card. And I did the same sky background onto a blue note card, and I topped this image, the die cut, with the back panel onto it, and it looks really beautiful in real life. The glitter, the shine, the cloud is visible. It's not as visible on the video, but it is visible. Added some gel, white gel, and here's the completed card of that particular card. And now for the next card, I took an owl image, which is also in the stamp set, and I stamped him multiple times onto a white cardstock, and I started to color it using some e-colors. The colors that I've used are all repeated in different variations on all the stamps, so I haven't really used a whole lot of colors. When you look down in the description below, you can see that it's not many colors. It's just the same colors that I've used it with different combinations over and over again. So again, what I'm trying to say is you don't have to have all the Copic markers that are available there to use. You can easily use the colors. Now, in the past, previously I told you you can make your own backgrounds, and here it is. I'm making a whimsical background for this owl. I wanted him to be in a wooded scene, so I created some triangular trees, really not realistic looking, just triangular trees all over the background, but using my pencil. And then I took a Copic friendly pen. This is a Copic liner pen and 0.5 thickness, and I just outlined all the trees using that black pen. You can see there, it's all done. And then I also drew in a branch for one of the trees. For the taller trees, I just drew in a line and added some V's, and that's it. And there you go. And after I was all done with it, it was time to color. I used 4 shades of green, and out of which I just changed the combination for each of the shades for the trees. So the taller trees with the branch in the middle, I used a darker combination. So I think it was 28, G29, G07, and YG13. So what I did was I flicked the lines from inside going out for the taller trees, and for the smaller trees, I flicked the lines from top coming downwards. I don't know how to, so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just flicking the lines from top to bottom, and I'm going from darker to the lighter. So in this case, I started off with G07, I think. I'm not sure what's the colors I used, but it's down there in the description below. And then I went with the lighter shade at the bottom. So that just gave a two-toned trees rather than having just one single tone. So my idea was to create this wooded background and have the owl. And then I also put in that stenciling, the cloud stenciling all over it. It's a background, it's not realistic, it's just a background that I created using these images. So it's, of course, the the trees and the owl is floating in the sky, but hey, it's a background. I wanted to keep all the cards a little cohesive, have similar things, similar elements, and that's the reason. And then I added the owl onto that background using pop dots, and then the background was all ready. Again, as I said, you can create your own backgrounds, you can make balloons, you can do whatever you want. And then I cut the sentiment on the same, I die cut, I stamped and die cut the sentiment on the banner die, but instead of using it horizontally, I used it vertically right on the top. And I think the sentiment said always, I don't know, sending owl, I don't know, I don't remember what it is, but it's there, sending all my love, that's what it is. And then I put that entire panel onto a blue note card, and that finished that card. And here is the look of the card, I decided to add some white dots to his cute cheeks, and then here's the look of the final look of the card. And then for the last card, for the 5th card, I decided to use all the critters that are there in the card set, and I wanted to create a birthday bash scene. So all of these critters have come on a fall day to celebrate their friend's birthday, and so they're all looking happy, and you know, they're all gathered and the leaves are falling. So what I did was I took all the squirrel, the hedgehog, the fox, and the moose and the owl. Obviously I couldn't fit him right here, but I did stamp him later. There you go, you can see him peeking out there. And then I colored them all exactly the same way as I colored the previous all the previous images, the leaves and the moose and the fox and everybody, the same way, nothing different. I added some leaves, falling leaves on that image, and here you go, they're all colored. And then I added that sky background, and they're all there on a fall morning. They morning or evening, I don't know, they're there celebrating the friend's birthday, wishing him or her a bountiful birthday. And I added some gemstone, put it on a side folding card, and that completed this card. And here's the look of that. And here are all the 5 cards that I made today. I hope you liked it and you will give it a try, and not hesitate using 1Stamp to make 5 cards. And if you liked it, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Have a good day. Bye bye.